I spent 6 months and over 1,000 hours developing a single Roblox game by myself, and it completely changed my life. This is the current outcome. Little disclaimer before we start the video. I'm not making this video to hop on the I made this game in 30 days trend that's currently on YouTube. This is my actual passion project that I've poured blood, sweat, and tears into, and I wanted to start documenting it. To make a Roblox game that isn't slop, you need 3 things. The ability to write in a programming language and actually understand it, able to build or model on your own, and have passion for the craft with creativity. There's a few other things that will 100% help, but they aren't necessary, like UI design, VFX, GFX, basically making your game look pretty, but they aren't required. I already have the ability to build since I've been building stuff on Roblox since 2014, starting in a game called Build Your Own Mech. This is an older building game that some of you absolute chads might know. I've sunk probably at least 10,000 hours into building games and studio building alone, and starting in like 2020, I got into Blender and I have over 2,500 hours in modeling random junk but never finishing it. So I sadly don't have much to show for it. Now you can't make a game with just building alone, as a lot of you, including me, want to believe, so let's take us back to early February 2025. It was roughly 4 to 5 o'clock in the morning. I was driving home at midnight after finishing in the gym. Why so late, you may ask? Well, I've been working in construction since 2023, and since it's seasonal, we have pretty harsh winters.
What the fuck happened to the windows? Dude, it's just snow. What the fuck?
We get laid off in the winter, so during this I was pondering what I really wanted to do going forward, since running this YouTube channel on and off, only providing content when I would get random bursts of motivation, knowing that I probably wouldn't be able to continue YouTube. Like, before my layoff this year, I was working over 14 hours a day, and let me tell you, being an 18-year-old doing that is not what I want my future to be like. So with my current interests surrounding construction, I was like, hey, I've used heavy equipment before. I've almost got enough hours to get my license for it, and it was fun, but I don't think I would be able to pursue it as a career for the rest of my life. How about I try making a little excavator demo? Now, I went into this with, let's just say, lackluster knowledge with scripting. Like, yeah, I've made a few projects in the past, but I wouldn't really show anyone, so I started off with going into Blender and modeling a pretty simple excavator model. For those curious, it's a CAT 336, which is actually one of the excavators I'm familiar with. After spending a few days modeling this, I hit up one of my best friends who does programming for a living, and I'm like, hey, I want to make a little game, but I don't know where to start. So after telling me to shut up, no, I'm just kidding. They showed me a few pointers, a few guidelines and rules to really help my scripting career, and gave me a module they made in the past that would exponentially speed up the process. I got started with scripting. And anyone curious, the module is just an input handler, so I don't have to use enum.keycodes. I do not like using those. Now, during my expertise on building games, I spent a lot of hours learning how the physics engine on Roblox works. From literal engines that don't have any scripts running, to make a car move on its own, to a full-on car chassis and suspension. I wanted this to be pretty realistic, so I got started making a test bench for an excavator. And one thing with physics, and especially tank tracks, is they're pretty laggy. So my solution to this was network the tracks to the player so it doesn't lag the server. Absolutely reduce the part count per track link. This would help exponentially. And lastly, when no player is seated, disable the hinge joints in each track and weld them all to the frame. For those who don't know what welding is, it's pretty much sticking a part to another one. Fast forward to when I had a little test going. What I used is I had 2 hinges on their own individual part for their own movements, and I connected these with rods. When the player has network ownership over the assembly, you can modify constraints without having to worry about the server jazz. So I simply added and subtracted the length of the rods to lower and raise stuff. This worked so good that I hit up my friend. I was like, yo, wanna check this shit? And he's like, yeah. And we got this clip of us fighting with excavators. Now, all this time I've been speaking about coding a simple excavator chassis, but this was the essential foundation for the game and its concept throughout this excavator alone, script-wise. I probably spent about 30 hours since I didn't follow any tutorials and I just sat there and suffered. Eventually the suffering started to become joy. I don't know if I'm a masochist or something, but I started adding features like the ability to pick up the bucket. This led me to my first hassle and what really started this little learning experience to morph into what it is today. You can't have an excavator without excavation, huh? Well, I thought so too. So I started looking into how terrain worked with the voxel system. To break it down, how Roblox terrain works is it's on a voxel grid. You can roughly modify a voxel. A voxel is 4 studs cubed, if anyone is wondering. system. Now, it's not as simple as that, but the basic rundown is we have a few methods of destruction. I found this dev forum post of someone creating a shovel destruction system for the military game. I think this was for attrition. I can't find the original post, but I downloaded a video of it. This led me to learn methods such as fill block. This works by using the parameters of C-frame, which is the position and rotation combined, the size and material. This worked flawlessly for like anything other than an excavator bucket, since when you dig, you kind of want to keep track of what you destroy, which is quite difficult with this method since it doesn't provide much information back. So I started going on the path of using read voxels, which uses region 3s to figure out where the voxel would be in that specific region 3, aka the position and size of the excavator bucket with whatever terrain voxel collided with that region 3. If you don't know what a region 3 is, they're an older form of spatial query that allows you to figure out what's inside that area. It uses vector 3s, which is a type of measurement for a three-dimensional thing, which is like if you resized a part by 2 by 3 by 10, to write that it would be vector 3.new 2 by 3 by 10. After we figure out what voxels are inside this bucket, we contract them in a cache or table and then replace them with original area with fill region. This method is written like region 3 resolution and material. The resolution will always be 4 since the voxel system is only on a 4-stud basis and there's no way to get around that. The material we would use to destroy terrain would be enum.material.air, which just replaces whatever is in that area with just air. I'm going to do a little time skip for the sake of my sanity and editing this video so I don't bore you guys with the math and the issues. But I basically had to dump out what was in the bucket, so we placed 2 points, one on the bucket and one on the stick. The stick is the piece of metal that's connected off the boom, and then calculate the difference between the 2 points orientations on a specific axis. Let's say if it is greater than and surpasses 70 degrees, then we call this module that I made that figures out where the part will be, the size it'll be based on the amount of voxels you destroyed inside the bucket, and the material / color. After I made the excavator, I tried making a drag system, but I didn't have much luck, so I found a tutorial by Heath Haskin, which is a Lumber Tycoon YouTuber and a good programmer. I used his system, but the system was a bit outdated and I had to change a lot of it, so after rewriting a bit of it, I had to integrate it into my framework, which required a little tinkering, a few changes, but ultimately I got it to work flawlessly. Now that I'm in this stage, I'm like, well, shit, I've kind of created everything I wanted to, but I have this burning urge to continue, and I got no sweet clue what I want to make. So sleep-deprived me after getting home from the gym, once again at like 4 a.m. in the morning, I decided to code a dialogue system, which is similar to a minigame system. Bro, my voice is giving out, holy shit. How it basically works is you store 3 strings under a parent you're interacting with the 3 dialogue paths, main being if you succeed in whatever the requirements and prerequisites are, alt being if you didn't succeed, and first being the first time you talk to the NPC and their introductions. So 4 a.m. me decided to code something completely out of my skill set and did an absolutely amazing job at it. So good that the next day I rewrote it from scratch because it was that bad. Me writing sleep-deprived code is a recipe for disaster. The next day it is impossible to read. I learned this quote quite recently that applies to this. You don't need to write perfect code, just code that doesn't make people cry when they read it. And let me tell you, when I read this the next day, I had a few tears running down my face. So after rewriting it, I was like, hell yeah, I know what to add to this. I can make a shop. While pondering this, I remembered a few old attempts at something similar to Lumber Tycoon 2 and how much I've always wanted to make a game like this. I tried creating one with my friend that I mentioned earlier a couple of times, one in 2020 and another one in like 2022. And you know, I guess it was either out of our skill set and we also just couldn't finish it. But the cool thing about this was the developer and owner of Build Your Own Mech, my childhood game, was like, yo, you can put me as a cashier. So I took his avatar from that game and brought it over to my new game. Now with this new inspiration in mind, I knew what I wanted to do and I was like, yeah, I got an idea what I can make next. So I spent probably the next week making an in-depth shop system and rewriting sections of the dialogue system over and over and over and over and over and over until I only got it finished recently back in like late July, early August. This was around March, so I had lots of fun. After creating the dialogue system and the shop system, which included item spawning and despawn with anti-theft, I joined these 2 systems together, which at the time, they were both out of my league, so I needed to do a lot of revisions later on as my skill and experience progressed into a fully fledged working let's say at this state it was working sometimes. At this point I was really proud of myself and I was like, yo, let me do some polishing. So I bug tested and rewrote part of the dialogue system again because I just love it. After finishing the shop system, I realized that this is going to be a game that I want to be fun, a game that I've always wished existed, a game that I want to play. So progression will have to be a thing. So I temporarily scrapped the idea of excavators and shoved that bee into storage, and I started working on a bare bones tool digging system, and I got this to work and I was like, hey yo, if this is gonna be a game, I gotta start making a map. I've had some experience working on real games like Elite Engineering, which is where some of my clips and a lot of my pictures come from in previous segments, which is technically a successor to Build Your Own Mech to my own projects. I had this racing game which I worked on a year prior, but I gave up due to not having the knowledge of scripting and not having the time because of construction. I just had too many goddamn hours, I just couldn't keep up anymore. So that got scrapped. So with the knowledge I earned from working on that racing game and the road tech, which I spent a few weeks developing, I posted some of the clips on my second channel. Because of this, I knew how to make roads that were smooth and realistic AF. So the next thing I needed to do was figure out how I was going to make the terrain map. So I hopped into Blender, and for the sake of time, I'll just summarize. I learned how to make terrain originally starting with randomization, which I didn't like, and it was hard to make roads work with. I eventually landed on an idea of just using a plane, subdividing it, and using a higher resolution subsurf, since triangles don't matter with voxels the same way they do with 3D models with directly importing. With this newfound knowledge, I hopped into Photoshop and drew up a little template for what I want the map to be. Now I got a little carried away because the map is a little bit bigger than what I wanted it to be, so you can see the future plans for the map. But right now, I'm only going to consider the little guitar-shaped section. I'll go back to English, sorry. The legend is on the side. Every rectangle is roughly 500 studs in-game. Over the next probably week or week and a half, or probably more, I conjured up a map that I could use. Then I made the roads, which wasn't as simple as, I just made the roads, but I can't be bothered to explain it in depth because it's quite the complicated process. I imported it to Studio, and then I imported the roads. Now we have something roughly resembling a map, but not quite. Needed a lot of work with trimming the excess terrain and making the roads fit properly with the terrain. I spent a long time going around the map, road to road on every section, side to side, putting tender love and care into making it look smooth and good, fixing the excess terrain, filling in the holes between the terrain and the road, you get the idea. After this, I made a terrain generation system. To simplify what I did, I'll summarize it in a synopsis type thing. I started off with the regions, which we know are region 3s, reading the current voxels to find the surface, creating layers which I can manually change in an attribute, and packeting the whole area and saving it in a cache. When the player destroys a voxel, it grabs that specific region in the cache and replaces it entirely, after a set time of course. So let's say the player destroys something and like 10 minutes later, it'll replace it. It'll probably be longer than that, that's just an example. Now, we wouldn't have terrain generation without ores, so after the game regenerates all the terrain, it'll spawn in ores based on the presets I can change for every regional area. The rarity, the height, how big they are. After we regenerate the terrain, we spawn in these nodes which start off as parts, and we just do fill block with the part size C-frame, and then destroying the part, leaving behind a piece of terrain that resembles an ore. After I made the layer / map generation system and the ore generation, I linked it up with the tools. Basically, to summarize, you're only allowed to mine inside the regions and you're not allowed outside. Upon completion of these unionized systems, I started to work on the plot system and had an absolutely blissful opportunity to work with a dialogue system that I very much loved. Nah, I'm being sarcastic. I absolutely did not love working on it. Before I got any progress into the plots, I needed to learn data stores, which, to put in perspective, I was similarly scared of learning data stores as going to my prom on my last year of high school. So yeah, I made my own saving system, but like, I was absolutely terrified of data loss. I took a break, hopped in the bath. After I hopped in the bath, dead ass, right away, a video related to data stores popped on my YouTube feed, and I cannot make this shit up. It was a post related to Profile Store, which is a remake of the original Profile service, which was made by the same person, Loshhs, which is a famous dev known for his games such as Mad Murderer, Mad Paintball. He's made a lot more, but that just has more modern titles that you're more likely to be familiar with. Thanks to this open source module that ultimately replaced my caveman module, I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. I was able to move forward with my game and design how the plots were going to work. To summarize how they work in BASIC, we have an array of rules in the order of plots. So let's say key 1 is the first plot up to grid 100. The plots are 500 by 500 wide, so each tile is 50 studs squared. The way I made this work was I hooked it up with my favorite system, the dialogue system. And first, we needed to determine which type of plot tile purchasing we will be doing. Starting off with the actual owning your plot. This works by finding out if you own any previous plots in your data, and if you don't, show you the unclaimed plots which you were able to buy. The tiles you start off with are the 4 middle ones. To be precise, they're tiles 45, 46, 55, and 56. If the player has enough money, they can purchase it. Onto purchasing a bigger plot. If the player does in fact own a plot, it'll transport you into the buy more tile screen, which allows you to select which tiles you want to purchase. This uses the previous bottom arrow screen with the inclusion of being able to click with your mouse on the actual tiles you want, so you don't have to go through every tile with the arrows. The cost of tiles is calculated based on the amount of tiles you currently own. So let's say if you own 5 tiles, it'll be $50, and if you own 10 tiles, it'll be $100. This isn't how it works exactly. The math I used was the base price per tile multiplied by the growth rate, which is like 25% for every plot, to the power of the amount of plots you own, subtract the starting 4. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. The next step after making plots is, you know, the ability to use the plots, so I hooked it up to the save system, and the way it works is the client is like, yo, cuz I want that shit, bruh, and the server's like, hey, yo, bruh, didn't know you chill like that, damn, and the server loads in the plot you select. If anyone is curious, I'm using Profile Store, which I mentioned earlier, made by Loshhs. After this, I did a bit more map work. I started working on this business plaza and a dealership of some sort, but this was all shortly lived because, sorry for my language, but I had to get a job again since in this current time period, it's now spring and I had to go back to work. The previous year I did a lot of concrete work and little side jobs, and this year I wasn't really ready for it. I got put into a different crew and started working with pipes, and yes, this includes sewage, and yes, I was done with it after I got covered in human brown waste. You can assume what that is.
They call it corn.
Around May, a bit of family issues started happening, and I was planning a trip with my friend to ride across the province on my motorcycle, or dual sport if you want to get into the details. On May 16th, 2025, the night before we were going to go, I decided to have a little bit of fun. I thought to myself I wouldn't get hurt, and you know where this is going. So my bike has dual sport tires, and they got more traction on asphalt than they do on dirt, and especially no traction on mud. I seen some random dude on a CRF, and since I've been riding for a while now, I was like, let's show off. My bike's technically a race bike, but I plated it for the street and made it street legal, so it's puffy as fuck for its size. I went around the berm, I noticed it was slippery, and I lost the front, but I saved it. Around the second berm, the same thing happened. I lost the front again, but I saved it. But this time, the recovery was too late. And on the next berm, I wasn't in a good position, and I lost it. I rode my bike to work that day to make sure it was all ready to go for the upcoming trip. I wasn't wearing any gear, just a helmet and a jacket. I didn't have feelings or fear of getting hurt. This is probably what they mean by young and dumb, but going at least 50 kilometers an hour, I'm not sure it was off-road. I was probably doing 60 or more, into a sharp-ass turn, losing your front end, and absolutely bashing your knee off a rock hurts. I had all the weight of my bike and me combined, concentrated into a single point, which was my knee. The bike didn't get hurt because I took the impact, but this is when I realized, fuck, I'm not going to be able to work for a while. So after working a bit in the construction and pipe fitting this year, on and off from April to this day, and never really liking construction to begin with, I took this opportunity to hone my skills and learn. I kept working on my game after the incident, but I still had family issues and it started to become more difficult to work on my own stuff, so I took a break and started doing YouTube shorts, so I was at least doing something productive. Fast forward to the middle of June, my old friend I've known for a long time got in contact with me, and we started talking about our projects. I showed him the game I've been working on, aka Soulworks, but at this point it was called Plate Machines, the original name, and attempted to show what I've done. But for some reason, everything broke. The plot system, the dialogue system, anything complex that I spent a long time stress testing and bug fixing all broke at the same time, which is honestly comical looking back, since I never had any of these issues at all when I was testing. So after this absolutely embarrassing moment, I was like, damn, I gotta make something and fix it all so I don't look like a fool. And so I started trying to open up my schedule because at this point it started to become like hell. It has become such an important thing to me since I've been working on this goddamn game for so much. It's hard not doing nothing, and around the end of June-ish I opened up Studio for the first time in a while. I was expecting myself to not know how to do anything and have my entire code base to be a completely foreign entity and forgetting about it all, but surprisingly after a few hours of looking at it, it all came back to me. The first order of business was fixing the little inconsistencies with the plot system. It wasn't too hard, just a few dumb practices and a few if statements that were an easy fix. The second order of business was the dialogue system, and once and for all, I needed to say it was fixed and finished. So with the limited time I had, I went through it bit by bit, making sure it worked. The code system is pretty solid, and I haven't had any issues since. I've even added features like skipping the dialogue by clicking so you don't gotta wait, and adding animations with SFX or sound effects to it. After I made the dialogue system, I really polished and honed in the digging system, creating an interactive UI which is really satisfying to use. This is definitely not the final product, but the way it works is each ore type has its own health and each tool has its own damage. If you miss, it doesn't take any health away. If you hit the green area, it takes damage. A little bonus, you see that little yellow area? That's an excellent hit. The way this works is the damage hits the same, but it rewards you with a guaranteed bigger ore once you dig up that part of the terrain for every excellent hit you get. Now we're on to working on a tool system. I thought, hey, games have their own inventory and hotbar system, so I rigged up a little UI for the tools from scratch, not using ROBLOX's inventory Feburary at all, and the way you interact with it is basically hitting your number keys on your keyboard, or you can click each one. I later polished on this and made it so you can visually see which hotbar slot you have selected by turning the background to a more grayish white. This has built-in support for tool icons, but I don't have any of them made, and I'm trying to get actual progress done and not little things like that for now. Around this time, I made a daylight cycle that integrated with the shops and made different shop doors, like sliding doors that activates when you or your part is dragging near it, or regular doors that close when the shop is closed. Each shop has its own closing time, which makes it feel more realistic. After this, I had an inspiration and started making refiners. I learned how tags and the collection service works, and through this, I made different refiners that are hooked up to the drop volume module that I made originally from my excavator and digging tools. Starting out, they were just the refiner on its own, but I wanted the system to be big, a feature of this game that draws players in. Currently, I don't have much, but in the future, I'm planning on making a whole industrial system, which will let you process different stuff into different things, sort of like Astroneer's crafting tree or an industrialistic game. The way refiners work is you get their tier. Every refiner has its own tier with its own readings. Like tier 1, you would get 60% of the original size, since some will get lost. And on the mulcher, for an example, it sometimes spits out grass on the other side that wasn't processed. It'll get better with every tier, of course, but that's just the idea I programmed at that point. I made another one, which is just a sieve that filters dirt into fine dirt and leaves gravel on top that can't fit through the grate. It's kind of hard to visualize it since it's just normal parts with bright colors, but I promise this will look a lot better when I actually model these. Once I finished these at roughly like 6 a.m., I was getting ready for bed since I do not understand the concept of a sleep schedule, and to this day, I still enjoy my terrible habits. While I was in bed, I was job searching, and I realized all the fun jobs that are in my skill set or interest require post-secondary education. From the start of this adventure, with hating scripting at the beginning, I now genuinely loved it. I've sunk at least 900 hours into this project, including modeling, building, map design, everything else, how I was going to design and figure out the framework or codebase. On August 6th, I decided I wanted to get into software engineering as my career. This wouldn't have happened, and I would still hate what I did for a living and probably would have had regrets when I got old. But thanks to Roblox, the platform I've been using for most of my life, and my supporting friends that got me to this position, I knew what I wanted to do now. One issue: because I was in construction, I previously signed up for a college and was on a waiting list for operating machinery like heavy equipment and cranes. I slacked off in high school because of this. Make sure to go at the wall. Okay. And just took basic courses on my final year. This was a massive detriment to the current me, as I'm currently enrolled in a different college to upgrade my high school mark so I can get into my choice university to take software engineering. After this was decided, I started to take it more seriously. If I wasn't putting in an absolute shit ton of hours, I was legit doing at least 25% more and trying to be more productive, so I'd maybe be able to show Professor what I've poured my heart into and earn their respect. So after that, I decided to work on an electricity system. I made a new tag type, which was a generator, and every generator has different stats, of course, but I only have the starting one, so let's work with that. The wires were a different issue. I wanted them to be realistic, so using ropes were out of the question. Not only did they not support color 3D, which is RGB values, and use a legacy brick color feature. This only had a select few of hard-coded colors directly chosen by Roblox. They also don't have collisions, and there's no way to fix this, unfortunately, that I'm aware of. So I looked into using beams for the wires and using a mathematical C-frame approach for the collisions. This seemed awfully complex, so I eventually scrapped this idea. I decided to reuse the optimization tech from my excavator and approved upon it. Starting off with the networking, all the wires will be networked to the player so it doesn't lag the server. When the player doesn't grab that wire for a specific amount of time, it disables all the joints in the wire and welds it all together. An added feature to this is when the player loads into their plot, every loose item is anchored until they grab it. This is bypassed if the item was anchored before you saved, since I don't want stuff that's previously anchored to get unanchored. So now that we have that idea, I decided to create the wires with code, which works with odd numbers for the segments. The first segment being an end, and the next will be a regular segment. The last part will also be an end. The end holds the connector regions, which detect if the player is dragging a wire, and if they are, they can connect it using the previously made interaction system. It checks if it can't read, I'm falling asleep. Every time a player connects a new wire, it checks if it's in an existing assembly ID, and if it is, add it. If not, create a new ID. The way I'm tracking it to make sure there won't be any surplus from other wires being randomly added to the same ID. Every time we create a new assembly, we count it. So the first time you connect a wire, it'll be 1. The next time will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. When you remove it, you gotta reconstruct it. The first version was way too complex and worked by finding out which link you removed and reconstructed based on that. And not so surprisingly, I coded this in the middle of the goddamn night, sleep deprived. Let's go back to my favorite quote: you don't need to write perfect code, just code that doesn't make people cry when they read it. So yeah, the next day or two, I sat down thoughtfully and thoroughly rewriting the code so I didn't write myself into a corner again. This new reconstruction function works by finding out if the segments are welded, and if they are, connect to that ID. Go through every segment of the previous ID chain and create new IDs based on what are connected with welds. This uses the previous connection function that determines if it has an ID or not. Best practice for programming is to not repeat yourself in your own code, so it just basically reuses the connect function and wipes the old IDs. I hooked up the wires to the save system and saved each segment. Using the create wire function we previously made, we create the wires, but instead of setting it to a set C frame, it grabs it from the table and puts the part in the correct spot. It keeps these segments anchored so it can determine if a wire connection has been previously made, and if there was, then connect those wires together. The way I optimized this was, instead of saving every segment, you save every other segment. Just make sure to save the ends. This pretty much halves the data costs while keeping a similar amount of accuracy. And this brings us to today. I've polished up a few things. Now, I haven't included everything in this video since there's some stuff I don't want to that aren't finished, or little things like opening up a box, starting a generator. It'd be different if I started off the video with explaining that, but we're so far in and talking about stuff that's significantly more complex, it just feels stupid bringing up the little stuff now. I've made a chassis, but I don't really want to talk about it right now since I'm not happy with it. My dream is to make a racing game as well, so I want this chassis to be realistic as heck. Pretty much like a racing sim game. I know A chassis exists, but I absolutely fucking hate it and will never use it for a game that I make. No hate to anyone who uses A chassis, it's a great option since coding your own chassis is very complex, but I want something to call my own and not an asset made by someone I've never met. I know this is extremely hypocritical to what I've been saying this entire time, since I'm using some of my friends' modules, profile store, and a few other stuff, but I don't give a fuck. As of writing this on August 28th, I just got a tour of my new college and met some old friends from high school, and I'll be starting this semester on September 2nd or the 3rd. I kinda forgot low-key. Hey, this part isn't scripted, but I wanted to say, if you enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing. Let me know how you feel about this type of content. Should I continue try to do these more documentary, long-form style videos? My last video did really well. It's sitting at over 3.7 thousand views, and it really means the world. I was expecting this video to get like 700, and I'm kind of blown away by that figure. It's gotten over 116 likes, with a 98% like ratio. And also, I haven't done one of these in a while, but the last milestone video was November 2nd, 2024, and we're quite a bit past 200, currently sitting at almost 700. So thank you for 300, 400, 500, 600, and hopefully when this video comes out, 700. It really means the world. If you want to support the game, there'll be a Discord server. I'll put it in the comment section and pin it. I'm not giving out the game link yet just because it's not done, and I want to have pre-alpha or something at least forming a playable game loop. It's not far away, but there's a few things I want to change and fix. And if you want to support the YouTube channel, you can join the Discord server. It's in the description. Thanks for watching and have a good day. And here's a little bonus clip at the end of this of something I made yesterday that I thought was pretty funny.